Before we begin, I want to take a moment to explain what this series is and why I think these journals are so fascinating. The Sinclair Weymss journals span 417 years, from the first entry in 1353 to the last in 1770. Across 15 generations, they tell the story of two Scottish clans and a sacred mission carried out far to the west. According to the tradition preserved in these writings, that mission was to establish a sanctuary in the New World, a refuge for their ideals, their descendants, and what they believed would one day become a free nation. The journals describe a sweeping, multi-generational story involving the Knights Templar, hidden treasures said to have vanished from France in 1307, voyages to North America, secret alliances, sacred obligations, and a mission later referred to by America's founding fathers as the Covenant. In total, the story is spread across 20 books, written in Latin, Old English, and Modern English. And what makes them so compelling is that they don't read like a textbook. They read like a personal record, journals, reflections, observations, and first-hand accounts passed down across centuries. That's what this series is about. My goal here is to walk through the journals themselves, bring their story to life, and let the narrative unfold entry by entry. Now, if you want the broader context surrounding these journals, there's a book I definitely recommend. It's called The Greatest Templar Tale Never Told by Scott F. Walter. Scott's book provides much more of the surrounding context, interpretation, and larger framework around the journals. What I'm doing here is a bit different. I'm focusing mainly on the journals themselves. So if you want to go deeper beyond this series, I'll have links in the description below where you can get the book directly from Scott's website. And with that said, let's get this thing started. There are some stories that begin with a map. Others begin with a ship. And then there are stories like this one. Stories that begin with a child, a journal, and a memory someone believed was important enough to preserve. What you're about to hear is not a reconstruction that I invented. It is the story as it appears in the journals themselves. My goal in this series is not to force every claim into certainty, and it's not to argue every point into the ground. It's to tell the story that the journals tell, seriously, honestly, and with as much historical awareness as possible. At times I'll step in to clarify a name, a political moment, or why a detail matters. But the backbone of this series is the text. And the first journal begins not with a grand expedition, but with an 8-year-old boy named Henry Sinclair. This first episode covers the opening portion of Book 1, from Henry's childhood in the 1350s through 1368, when the Western lands begin to reappear in the journal, not as a childhood memory, but as an unfinished mission. Along the way, we watch Henry move from boyhood to duty, first as a son, then as an heir, then as a lord, and finally as a man being quietly drawn into a larger tradition. Before we begin, one quick note. Some of the language in these journals reflects the worldview of their authors and the eras that they come from. I'm preserving the story as written, but when context matters, I'll step in. Henry's first entry is small, almost innocent. There's no prophecy yet, no treasure, no grand theory about the Western world. Just a father giving his son a journal on his 8th birthday and telling him to write down what he wants to remember. That matters, because in a story built on generations of journals, this is where the chain begins. And almost immediately, Henry tells us what captivates him: the languages, the sea, and the western banks. Already, the West is there, not yet as myth, not yet as destiny, just as longing. November 5th, 1353. My father gave me this journal for the celebration of my 8th birthday. He tells me to write about things I want to remember when I am a man. This year, Father Dominic will teach me Latin, French, Gaelic, and Norwegian. Father has promised to take me fishing with him in the spring. I can't wait to see the western banks and want to catch lots of fish. April 18th, 1354. This day we leave to fish on the western banks with my father and 6 of his fishing vessels. I am excited to be included and will try not to be sick of the rough water. We are to travel first to the monastery in a bark of 8 tons with my father and 11 men. Once in Iceland, we will travel with additional fishing boats to the western banks. Father has been there many times, but this is the first time I have been allowed to accompany him. Then comes the first voyage west, and this is where the journal stops feeling merely domestic and starts feeling cinematic. A child at sea with his father, a distant island, gray cliffs, a beach, birds overhead, fish breaking the surface, and then suddenly, a child in the water. This is one of the most vivid moments in the entire opening section of the journal. Henry doesn't present it as legend, he presents it as memory. His father sees the child, jumps overboard, saves him, and in so doing, creates the first bond between Henry's world and the people of the Isle of the White Stag. The boy's name is Akush, and that relationship becomes one of the emotional anchors of the larger story. Just as important as what follows. Not conquest, not fear, but exchange. Food, gesture, words, hunting, swimming, shared ritual. The journal presents this first contact as friendship. May 15th, 1354. As evening came upon us, I saw for the first time the gray cliffs of the island my father calls Isle of the White Stag. He has been there 6 times with his father. We had already passed other lands further to the north, but father said the island was uninhabited and offered good game. There is a wide beach at the bottom of the cliffs, and further to the north, I can see much wood and small animals as they search for food on the shore. As we approach the beach, I see many birds and see the fish jumping in the water. It was then that I saw a small child clinging to a piece of driftwood. He looked exhausted, and father kicked off his boots and jumped overboard to help him. He swam to the boy and then swam with the boy under his arm to the beach. As the bark pushed onto the shore, a small black-haired naked man came running down the beach with his arms outstretched. He knelt in front of father with his arms outstretched and his head down, as if hoping this strange man would return his son. Father placed the boy in his arms, and the small man placed his right hand on my father's chest in gratitude before carrying his son up the beach and onto the cliff face. May 16th, 1354. We have set up camp and I was asked to collect driftwood for the fires. I saw many different types of birds and they seem unafraid. Father promises to teach me how to determine latitude this eve. May 17th, 1354. The small black-haired man returned today with his son much recovered and another man. They brought with them a large deer as an offering to our dinner. They also showed us how to find roots and bake them in the coals of the fire. It tasted much better than the dried fish we have been eating during our voyage. Father only knows a few of their words, but they communicate mostly with their hands and drawing in the sand. He showed them how to make nets out of vines and catch the fish, and offered the man some animal skins to wear against the cool weather. The boy is about my age. His name is Akush, and he showed me how to dig for clams. May 18th, 1354. Akush and his father returned today with a group of hunters. They took us hunting for small game. The natives laughed as the seamen from the boat made their beds upon the sand. They pointed to the water, but it was later, when the tides, translated as monster waves, came in that we understood. The men scrambled to the top of the cliff but lost some of their bedding to the sea. May 20th, 1354. Today I swam in the ocean with Akush. May 21st, 1354. Today we celebrated the Bright Mother Goddess Day with our new friends. They too celebrate the great goddess who brings life to them throughout the year. We have many similarities. July 6th, 1354. Our visit to the Western Banks has ended and our boats are filled with the codfish we found in the deep waters off the Isle of the White Stag. I have learned much from my friend Akush and have given him a knife made from whalebone to remember me. He has taught many of his words as I have taught him some Gaelic. We sail home the same way we have come and by month's end should return to Orkney if the weather cooperates. After the voyage west, the journal returns home. And that matters, because this doesn't read like a legend trying to impress you with one extraordinary event after another. It settles back into ordinary life, family, festivals, language, work, seasons, and belief. That rhythm gives the story credibility as a lived record. The Western Banks are not forgotten, but they recede into memory for a time, while Henry continues growing up in a household shaped by both duty and ritual. And the religious world of the journal is already unusual. Henry's family moves easily between Christian observance and older sacred traditions, with repeated references to goddesses, feast days, and a spiritual continuity between the old religion and the new. That blended worldview becomes one of the defining textures of the journals and helps explain the symbolic language that appears later. What matters here is formation. Henry is being shaped by family, by memory, by language, and by a worldview that sees meaning everywhere. August 28th, 1354. We have returned home to Orkney. Half of the ships have returned to Caithness, while the rest anchor in Kirkwall Bay. We stopped once again in Greenland and Iceland for provisions and were delayed by storms. Now that we are home, Father must return to Midlothian as King David is still imprisoned. I have been instructed to assist the dockmaster in preparing the fish for winter. September 16th, 1354. Today we celebrate the Greek festival of Demeter. I wish I were old enough to participate in the rituals, but I am happy my father includes me in the festival. March 9th, 1357. Today my mother participated in the festival to honor all mother goddesses, along with my Aunt Margaret. Father Dominic is teaching me about the old religion and is also teaching me Greek. It is difficult and I much prefer Latin. August 1st, 1357. Today is the festival of the grain harvest in Orkney, where we celebrate Demeter and Ceres. There are so many festivals and so much food. I will soon be fat as a pig. September 19th, 1357. We celebrated Michaelmas today. My younger sister Annabelle celebrated her birthday. I gave her a wooden box I carved myself. She is 10 years old today. November 22nd, 1357. I spent the day at the forge with my father, learning about the Feast of Wayland, the Norse god of the smiths. I am clumsy at the forge, but respect those who are very clever. The smiths are creating nails and rivets for a boat to travel the West Banks in the spring. Father Dominic says that Father Ricardus will accompany them with the 7 new acolytes. November 30th, 1357. Today I received word that Alexander de Ard has been proclaimed by manifest as legitimate heir of my grandfather Earl Malise. He is my cousin, but mother and father are angry because they think it should have been my right to inherit. They say I must grow up fast in order to protect my heritage. Then the tone changes, abruptly. In 1358, Henry's father leaves, and later that year, Henry records that his father was killed in battle. The child who had gone west as a boy now becomes heir to a responsibility he did not choose. Within a handful of entries, the journal turns from wonder to burden. His mother sends him away for a time, counselors proclaim him Earl of Rosslyn, and the people around him begin preparing him to rule. The West remains in the background, but now it is attached to loss, and that matters. Because from here on, the journal is no longer just a boy remembering a voyage. It is the record of a man being prepared for obligations that existed before he fully understood them. April 25th, 1358. Father is left for London, where he will sail for Europe. He promises to be home by the end of the year. Today is the Roman festival of Ceres and Demeter. Father Dominic celebrates the old religion and teaches me there must be a balance between the old and the new. September 17th, 1358. Father was killed in battle this day. Mother has sent myself and Sister Annabelle to live with our Aunt Margaret for a short time. Sir Thomas Stewart, her husband, is to teach me my duties when I become Earl. September 21st, 1358. Mother's counselors have proclaimed me Earl of Rosslyn, and say that I must now take my father's place as Lord. Sir Thomas promises to guide me in my duties when I return home to Rosslyn. In my absence, Mother will rely on Lords Halliburton and Weymss for counsel. September 29th, 1358. My Aunt Margaret has welcomed us to her home, and we once again feel as a family. Today we celebrate Michaelmas in the chapel. Sir Thomas is a stern master, but his lands are well managed and he is well respected. He is much older than Margaret, but he treats her well. I hope to learn from him so I may return to my mother's side as soon as I am able. November 11th, 1358. Today we celebrate St. Martin's Day. My aunt's kitchen is well prepared, and Sir Thomas continues to give advice on how to manage an estate as well as my future home. December 5th, 1358. I return home to Rosslyn today in the company of my mother's counselors and Sir Thomas Stewart. It is important that I be in Rosslyn for the celebration of St. Andrew's Day, the patron saint of Scotland. It is a big celebration where I will be recognized by my people that I am their lord. The next section compresses years of Henry's life. Estate matters, political expectations, travel, marriage, bereavement, knighthood, and then something even more important for the larger arc of the series: initiation. There are two levels here. On the surface, these entries show Henry becoming what medieval society expects him to become: a ruler, husband, father, and public man. But underneath that, the journals keep threading him deeper into something more esoteric: the craft, the seven brethren, symbolic instruction, sacred architecture, and obligations tied to the Holy Mother and to ideals that sound larger than local politics. It is quietly telling us that Henry is being initiated into a tradition. Not suddenly, not with one dramatic reveal, but gradually, over years. And notice how personal suffering sits right beside sacred obligation. He marries, he loses, he is knighted, he is instructed, he is initiated. That emotional layering gives the journal weight. February 1st, 1360. Today I must appear at the manorial court with the freemen to discuss the matters of the estate. I have reviewed the map of the estates and am prepared to discuss the upcoming planting season. March 13th, 1360. My brother-in-law, Sir Thomas Stewart, has been accused of killing the king's favorite mistress and has been imprisoned in Dumbarton Castle. They say he is to lose his head. April 15th, 1361. We received word today that Sir Thomas, Earl of Angus, has died at Dumbarton Castle of plague. My Aunt Margaret grieves. May 3rd, 1362. Today is Holy Rood Day, and we celebrate in the chapel with Father Dominic and Father Christophe. My mother spends a lot of time in the chapel and I fear is becoming melancholy. It is my hope that she remarries soon, as she is still a young woman. May 13th, 1362. We leave this day to travel to Denmark to attend the marriage of Princess Margrethe. I have only met her once, and she is still a young child. My counselors tell me that I too must marry soon to produce an heir. I hope it will not happen soon, as I do not feel ready. May 19th, 1362. We have arrived in Denmark, where the local people are celebrating a local holiday. They offer us food and drink in preparation for our meeting with King Magnus. I am nervous, as I have not seen him since I was a young lad. June 1st, 1362. At the insistence of my lord King Magnus, I have been married this day to Princess Florentina, who is just an infant. When she is of childbearing age, she will join me in Orkney. King Magnus is highly pleased. February 8th, 1363. I have received word that Princess Florentina, the daughter of King Magnus, has died. July 1st, 1364. I am to be married this day to Elizabeth of Strathern, my cousin, who is 14 years old. She will live at Rosslyn until she delivers our first child. Then we will move to Kirkwall in Orkney. She adheres to the Christian religion and talks constantly of God and Christ. I have been instructed by Sir Hugh Halliburton as to my duties on my wedding night. I hope I do not disappoint. September 29th, 1364. Today we celebrated Michaelmas, which my expectant bride has enjoyed very much. She is happy and well and looks forward to becoming a mother. Tomorrow I must ride to the nearby villages where they celebrate the feast day of Saint Sophia. She is the mother of faith, hope, and charity, and is known as the goddess of wisdom. I pray that she grants me wisdom in becoming a father and a good lord to my people. March 1st, 1365. My bride Elizabeth has died of a fever, but the girl child she has delivered thrives. I am saddened at the loss of my bride. The child, Margaret, will be well cared for by her nurses. She has red hair and blue eyes like her mother. Tomorrow is Holy Wells Day, a Norse holiday celebrated by my mother's family. We will bury Elizabeth on the following day in the churchyard here in Rosslyn. May 31st, 1365. Today I was made a knight by Sir William Halyburton and instructed in my duties to those who are in need. I pray that I am worthy and am thankful for this opportunity. Now I may take my rightful place at the Scottish Parliament as Mother has wanted. June 1st, 1365. Today was spent in the chapel receiving the instruction from the seven brethren, the secret masters, of investiture of obligation on the Holy Mother and to the preservation of the ideals and principles upon which we live and believe. I must remember to use the key of intelligence within the circle of reason to prepare myself for the Lord's will. Father Dominic's instruction in the old religion has prepared me well to appreciate the symbolism and rituals of the craft. August 3rd, 1365. Today we celebrate the festival of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and of the moon. August 15th, 1365. Today we celebrate the Assumption of Our Lady Mary in the chapel. October 18th, 1365. This day I am raised to the next degree by the craft and have learned the meaning of the architecture of the chapel. I have also been instructed on the manner of the Honorable Hiram Abiff's burial beneath the temple. By this point, Henry is no longer a child, and the western lands are no longer just a memory from a fishing voyage. In 1368, while at the king's court, Henry hears a seaman speak of land and game beyond Greenland, and immediately the old longing returns. He says it makes him anxious to travel to the western banks again as he did when he was a child. That one line is everything, because it links the boy on the beach to the man becoming responsible for a mission. Then, just a few entries later, Henry asks the brethren about men who had gone west in the spring of 1358. The answer is chilling in its own quiet way. No word has been received. None is expected. They were sent to find land for settlement. More were supposed to follow. Political unrest prevented that. Another journey may not happen for years. And suddenly, the story opens up. Now the Western lands are not merely a place Henry visited as a child. They are a place where people were sent. A place where something was being prepared. A place where history, duty, and silence have converged. March 1st, 1366. Today we celebrate the birthday of my daughter Margaret, who is now 1 year old, and the death of her mother Elizabeth. She is a happy child with red curls. I am reminded that I must remarry again soon. June 1st, 1366. Freeman's Court was held today. I make preparations to travel to Scone for the Scottish Parliament at the request of the King. October 4th, 1366. The craft met this day and advanced me to the next level. February 2nd, 1367. Today we celebrate Candlemas in the chapel. My daughter Margaret was present and is an unruly child. I suspect I was much the same when I was a child. I enjoyed watching her and gave her a sweet to keep her quiet. March 2nd, 1367. My daughter Margaret is 2 years old today. I must think of marrying again soon. My counselors stress that I must have a male heir. June 24th, 1367. Today is St. John's Day, and I have spent the day traveling throughout the villages to hear the complaints of my people. They seem well satisfied with their lives, and it delights me that they seem well pleased. The crops are doing well, and we have been blessed with rain this past month. It should be a goodly harvest. September 27th, 1367. We leave this day for Scottish Parliament. May 3rd, 1368. We leave this day to travel to Norway to meet with the king concerning my duties to the crown of Norway. I travel with 10 companions and knights who will protect me and amuse me during the long trip. May 31st, 1368. We have arrived in Norway in time for the feast of the Triple Goddess. I give thanks to the great goddess and ask her to bless me in my life that I may fulfill her will. We meet in the morning with the king and his court. June 1st, 1368. This day, while we supped with the king's court, we listened to a seaman who is returned from the western lands and tells us of the abundance of land and game past the ice banks of Greenland. It makes me anxious to travel to the western banks again as I did when I was a child. He tells of the journey and how he was forced to stay for many years before he was allowed to return. He makes me wonder of the 30 men who had left Norway in the spring of 1358. I pray that they are well and that they will return soon. July 24th, 1368. We have returned to Scotland. Tomorrow there is a freeman's court which I must preside over. There is a meeting of the craft this evening, and I must remember to ask them of the brethren who have now been gone for 10 years. July 26th, 1368. I have spoken with the brethren regarding my concerns for the men who had traveled to the western banks in the spring of 1358. No word has been received from them, but Brethren Cameron has said that none is expected. They were instructed to find suitable land for settlement and that more would follow. He acknowledged that they were men of the craft and included monks with herbal knowledge. Because of the political unrest in Scotland, no additional brethren have been sent. It might be several years before another journey can be planned. And that's where we'll leave Henry for now. Not yet as the legendary voyager of later entries. Not yet at the center of a full Western expedition, but as something much more compelling, at least to me. A child shaped by a formative journey, a young lord burdened by inheritance, and a man beginning to realize that the Western world he touched as a boy may be tied to a mission much older and much bigger than himself. In the next episode, we move deeper into Henry's adult life. The political stakes rise, the network around him becomes clearer, and eventually, the journals stop hinting and start saying outright what is at stake in the Western lands. If you're following this story with me, stay close, because the legend does not begin with treasure, it begins with memory. And memory, once written down, has a way of becoming a map. It's hard to believe we've already reached the end of our first episode. This project has lived in my mind for a long time, and like so many things that matter to us, it kept getting pushed further down the road. Delayed by life, by responsibilities, by the simple fact that starting something meaningful can feel just as overwhelming as finishing it. But at some point, I realized this story was not something I wanted to leave unfinished before it ever began. I wanted to commit to it, to start it, to follow it all the way through. And now finally that journey is underway. What we've covered tonight is only the beginning. There are 20 books in this collection, and we're still only about a third of the way through the first. So there's a long road ahead, and a fascinating one. My goal is to keep each episode around 30 minutes, so we can explore these journals in a way that is thoughtful, immersive, and sustainable. So thank you for being here for the very first episode of this series, and for the beginning of Reality Redacted. If this story intrigued you, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and come back for the next episode. We're only at the threshold, and there is much more still waiting to be uncovered. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may the great goddess be with you.